Hi, my name is Marie Daldorf. Today I'm going to teach you how to make lentil soup. All cultures have rituals welcoming in a new year. Italy is no exception. New Year's Eve is a very special celebration for families in Italy. And food is the focal point of any Sera di Capodanno, New Year's Eve. Families and friends gather together to share their thoughts about the previous year's blessings and optimism for the new year. The celebration has one very important item of food: lentils. Lentils are thought to bring good luck and fortune. The round shape of the lentils resembles Roman coins and symbolizes prosperity. In northern Italy, the dish is also served with cotechino, which is a spicy pork sausage that's native to the region. Pork is also thought to be good luck. At the end of the cooking time for the lentils, you drizzle on a little bit of olive oil, which is thought to bring good health. So now, let's begin. We're going to start with 3 carrots. I have an onion here, which I've kind of sliced in half, and 3 stalks of celery. We want to make sure that we're chopping these all the same size, that way they'll cook evenly. So I'm going to begin to chop my carrots. I'll slice them in half and half again. And I want to make the pieces about yay big, so everything is kind of uniform in size. Now similarly with I'll get to the other 2 carrots in a moment. Similarly with the onions, we want to cut these pretty much in the same size pieces. So we'll cut these. These 3 ingredients, celery, carrots, and onions, are the basis for many of Italian sauces and are called soffritto. So I'm going to continue with chopping my celery. Now, you want to also include the celery leaves because these will give it very earthy flavor. So here again, I'm chopping up the celery. Cut that in half to keep the sizes uniform. This takes a little bit of prep time, but it goes quickly once you've gotten the hang of it. And you want about 1 cup to 1.5 cups of each of these items. You don't have to be exact. As long as it's close, you're fine. Just make sure you don't leave any fingers on the cutting board. Now, while I'm chopping up the veggies, I'll mention one thing, that you do not need to soak your lentils. And I'm using, the best lentils to use are the green and brown lentils because they will hold their shape much better. You do not need to soak them because they'll cook in about 45 minutes to an hour. So what you do want to do though is to make sure that you wash the lentils at least 2 to 3 times just to get out any debris that might be included in the lentils. Soffritto here. I've got the carrots, I've got the onions, and I've got the celery. And I'm going to heat the oil. I put in about 3 to 4 tablespoons of oil, no more than 1/4 cup, in my saucepan. I want that to warm up. And then I'm going to chop my garlic. Now, I think I've mentioned before that I love garlic, so if you prefer not to have as much garlic, you can add fewer cloves. I'm adding 4 cloves of garlic here. And then I'm going to start with sauteing just the onions and the garlic in the oil, and then we will add in the celery and the carrots. And as I mentioned already, you don't need to soak the lentils, but you do want to make sure that they're properly washed. Now, this recipe can also be done in a pressure cooker, in a crock pot, or an instant pot. If you do it in a crock pot, it's going to take many, many hours to cook because a crock pot is a slow cooking process. Whereas a pressure cooker, it will cook in a very short period of time, but the results are pretty much the same. Okay, I think my oil is ready. I am going to drop in my garlic, and you can hear it begin to sizzle. If you've had a few carrots or celery pieces, no worries, they're all going to get blended together anyway. Okay, now you're going to stir this around for 1 or 2 minutes until the onion gets a little bit translucent. Now, once you've got the celery, the onions, and the carrots in the pot, you don't want to rush the process because you want the flavors to really meld together. And so it'll take up to about 10 minutes or so to saute these to the right consistency. Now, you don't want them to brown, you just want them to be translucent and flavorful. Moving along here, so I don't know if you can see inside the pot here, but it's starting to smell pretty good. Okay, it's been sauteing for about 2.5 minutes. So now I'm going to add in my celery and my carrots. And hopefully I get them all in the pot. Okay, now we're going to saute this. And like I said, you want to make sure that you sweat this properly, but that you also take your time with this. You might want to lower your heat so that you're doing these very slowly. And as I said, it's going to take about 10 minutes. Now, one of the other ingredients that I'm going to be adding shortly is fresh persa, Italian oregano, for those of you that may not be familiar with it. And I'm just going to chop it up small. If you don't have fresh oregano, you can always use dried oregano. May need to add just a little bit more because fresh oregano tends to be a little bit more stronger in its flavor than dried, so you'll need to calculate that as best you want. Make sure you stir these occasionally so that they're not burning or browning too much. And again, we want them to sweat, but we also want them to cook. So now I'm just going to let these go at it for a few minutes, and we'll be back in about 10. Okay, we're back. It's been about 10 minutes that the sofrito has been sauteed in the pan, and I think we're ready to add the next ingredients. What we're going to add next is the tomato sauce. Now what we're using, excuse me, not tomato sauce. What we're going to add, what I've added next is crushed tomatoes. It's best if you use San Marzano tomatoes because they're going to give you the best flavor. So once you've added in the crushed tomatoes, you just saute that for a minute or two. And I'm also now going to add in the oregano and saute that a minute. Then we're going to add in our 2 cups of lentils, which have been pre-washed twice. So we'll add those in here. A little wet because I just did that a few minutes ago. And now we're going to add in our 6 cups of chicken stock. Now you can use either chicken stock, vegetable stock, or some combination of the two. So now we've got all the ingredients in here except for salt and pepper. Now we want to add in our salt and pepper, but I also want to add in 3 or 4 bay leaves. I'm using 4 because my bay leaves are a little bit small, and we're going to remove these after the soup is cooked. So now let me add in my pepper. And you will have to taste and go back and see if you need to add any more salt or pepper to this later. So right now what we want to do is to raise this to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, you're going to lower the heat, cover the pan, and then let it simmer for about 40 to 45 minutes. Depending upon, your particular level of heat in your stove. Certain stoves are a little bit different, so it may take a few minutes more or less. We're back now, and I've had the soup on high heat, and now it's at a rolling boil. So what I want to do is to reduce my heat, and I'm going to put the lid on it and let it simmer for about 45 minutes, but I do want to stir occasionally. Now you'll notice that there's a little bit of foam that's formed on the top. You can remove that. Some people say to remove it, others say it doesn't really matter, so it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to do that. So now I've turned down my heat, stir it one more time here. I'll put the lid on and come back about every 10 minutes or so to make sure that it's still cooking and boiling properly and not overcooking or overboiling. And then in about 40 to 45 minutes, we will be ready to go to the next step. Okay, I'm checking my lentils and they're just about done. I would say they need about another 5 minutes. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do while these finish cooking is I'm going to put a little bit of spray Pam on my frying pan here and turn on the heat so that I can start cooking my sausage. Also going to add just a touch of olive oil, very little. And now the recipe calls for spicy pork sausage, and I'm going to instead use Costco mild Italian sausage. So here we are. We'll put these down on the frying pan and make sure that there's plenty of room. There we go. Okay, so we'll let those toast for a minute or two. We want them browned on all sides, so it'll take a few minutes while that happens. So you just make sure that they're not sticking to the pan. You can see that the sausage are now starting to brown nicely on one side, and we'll just continue cooking them until they're browned on all sides, which could take up to about 5 to 7 minutes. Again, I don't have the heat on. I have it on a little bit medium to medium high. Check my lentils again. Now, the lentils can either be a soup or a stew. If it's a little bit runnier, it becomes more like a soup consistency. If you want it a little bit thicker, like a stew, what you can do is to cook it without the cover for a few more minutes, and it will absorb the liquids. I've been slowly rotating these sausage so that they're browning on all sides. Now you probably want to check one to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. You can just kind of slice it, and it's clearly not done yet, so we want to wait until they're all totally cooked. Just to take a few more minutes. Okay, I just tested this one, and it's still not quite there. What you could do is about an hour before, or when you're starting your recipe here to make the lentil soup, you can take out your sausage from the refrigerator so that they'll cook a little bit more evenly and may not take as long to cook. I'm slicing up my sausage. And if you're serving individual portions, you can put either a whole sausage on each plate or however many you wish. I'm going to use my fingers here a little bit to help me position these sausage on the plate. So now the final thing that we're going to do is we're going to drizzle a little bit of olive oil on this. Make sure it's a good quality olive oil, because this is for good health. So now, here is our New Year's Eve traditional meal to be eaten at midnight. Lentil soup or lentil stew, however yours turns out. Let's go ahead and give this a try. Very good. I think people will want to go back for seconds. So, dalla mia casa alla vostra, buon Capodanno. Grazie.